Man, we're YouTubers now, June. We have ring lights, even better YouTubers than before. Here we go. Let's do this.
Logan, what are we doing here? It's Saturday morning. We just spent like 2 hours trying to set up this stupid lighting. Hopefully you guys can tell. Hopefully it makes a difference.
Yeah.
But it's been frustrating to say the least. And what are we doing here, Logan? We're spending our Saturday morning. There's so many other things that we could be doing. What are we doing here, Logan?
Well, I mean, I guess I would direct our listeners to the previous episode, right, where we talked about even why we're doing this in the first place. But, for all you listeners out there, me and June are really trying our hardest to produce the highest quality content we can. We've invested now in ring lights, so please let us know if you can notice any difference. We are extremely amateurs when it comes to filming and recording, so if you guys have any suggestions, criticisms, you're not going to hurt our feelings. We just want to learn and improve because we're in this for the long haul, baby. We ain't going nowhere.
Let's go.
Do it.
Yeah,
all right,
we're committed.
What are we talking about today, June?
All right, Logan, I think this is a great segue into the topic for today. I want to talk about hustle culture.
That was a nice segue.
Yeah, you like that because we're slaving away our Saturday morning.
You sound like a professional podcaster.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know about that yet, but hey, I'm trying my best. Faking it till I make it.
There we go.
So I'm in the process. But anyway, so I came across a little article in the New York Times. They did an interview with the Surgeon General, and they were talking about how mental health is basically the tobacco of the previous generation. The way that the healthcare industry fought against tobacco, that's the fight that we have against mental health today. That's how dire the situation is. Okay. What do you think about that statement? Do you agree, disagree? Thoughts, Logan?
I mean, I guess I don't really fully understand that analogy because like tobacco, I'm always like bad. But like mental health, like just the negative aspects of mental health or healthcare ignoring mental health's needs. Can you elaborate?
It would be more along the lines of people suffering today in terms of real numbers that we can measure. So for example, when we look at Americans aged 10 to 19, self-harming behavior is up 88%. And suicide rates for young Americans are also up 40%. And this is from 2001 to 2019. So within the past 2 decades, there's been a significant marker that we can see that especially our young adolescents are suffering today in our society. And I kind of get it. When we compare it to tobacco, right? It's a much simpler correlation there, right? You smoke, it leads to cancer. It's bad for you. So we recommend that you don't smoke. However, when it comes to mental health, there's so many different things that can influence our ultimate mental and emotional well-being that I feel like it's a much more complicated discussion. And, compared to the fight against tobacco that the previous generation had, the uphill battle for the betterment of mental health for Americans today, I would argue it's a much more complicated and challenging one.
Right. And I guess my attitude towards mental health, look, I mean, psychology saved my life. I think if I didn't properly address my bipolar disorder, who knows where I'd be today. I hope I'd be alive, but who knows? Medication, therapy, community all truly saved my life. I feel strongly about that. Simultaneously, feel like we kind of create a shitty product. The medicine I'm on, the most common side effect is weight gain. It's not like I'm sitting here with a 6-pack or nothing. Something I think about a lot. When me and you prescribe or advise our patients, hey, go find a therapist. How easy is that to do? It's really challenging, even to just get in to go see somebody. It's really expensive. When we prescribe like a simple SSRI antidepressant therapy, I've had a lot of patients go to me, hey doc, so this is going to make me feel better? And I'm always like, I hope so. I can't promise you though. I feel like we kind of produce a crappy product and it makes me depressed and kind of excited for innovation in the future. But, I really think we need to be mindful about where we're at with what we offer our patients.
I would argue that it's an incomplete product because crappy. I guess you could think of it as crappy because none of the modalities that we offer, especially in terms of the medications that we prescribe, these are magic pills. You're not going to take a pill of Lexapro and suddenly feel like you're over the moon. That's just not realistic. And at the same time, it's the best that we have. It's the best that scientific research has come up with. And
is it?
I would argue so. There's things like ECT. Of course, there's things that, like they're talking about psychedelics, even
Hmm.
ketamine drips. But for, a first line intervention, right? A person coming in to see you for the first time, they're depressed for the first time in their life. We're not sending this individual to get ECT immediately. That's something that's reserved for down the line.
Hmm.
And so as far as first line treatment goes, I mean, SSRIs are the most commonly used modality, right? And at the same time, I think there's sort of this expectation that sometimes patients may have that this is a magical solution and this is the answer to all their problems. So that's what I mean when I say incomplete product, because we recognize that SSRIs are not going to be the final answer. Like for example, in an individual who's waking up at noon every day, doesn't have a job, their family life is a mess, their finances are a mess, right? What is a SSRI going to do? And I think we need to maybe do a better job as clinicians, directing that patient to the appropriate resources to kind of get the other things in life in order so that it can help augment that SSRI therapy. Look, Logan, this is how I describe SSRI therapy to my patients, right? This is something that's going to help you to feel better and get you to the point where you're able to take action, so that you can start to build some more positive momentum in your life. It's not an end all be all solution. It's only something that's going to help you to help yourself. So, to a certain degree, you as the patient need to have responsibility to go beyond the medications that we're prescribing and be invested in your care. So, going from that, Logan, this interview that the Surgeon General had, when we're talking about the incredibly abysmal mental health outcomes that we're facing today in our society, one of the things that was brought up as a potential explanation was this idea of hustle culture.
Mm.
And I'll tell you here's a quote that the Surgeon General said. So it says, young people tell me they feel caught up in hustle culture. What they're saying to me was that they felt that they were being asked to chase certain objectives, getting a job with a fancy title, making a lot of money, becoming famous, acquiring power. And not only did many of them say that they were exhausted, but they weren't sure that was going to bring them happiness.
Mm.
So, yeah, so reading that statement, I really wanted to have this discussion about hustle culture today. So let's start here, Logan. How would you define hustle culture? What does it mean to you?
Hustle culture. How would I define it? I mean, I guess it's that desire to always want more. It's never enough. That's kind of how in my mind I define hustle culture. It really hits home close to, I think, both of us. Both of us clearly had to hustle to get into medical school, had to hustle in medical school to gain a psychiatry residency slot. And now clearly, we're trying to go above and beyond and do, this content creation relevant to mental health. We're definitely part of this culture too. So I think it's always like wanting more. And I think it's not all bad, right? It clearly got us into positions where, of course, as residents, we're not financially successful, but we're on the road to financial success. Absolutely, right? We're going to be okay. I don't think, though, it's all good either, right? There definitely can be an element of detriment, of harm, of, hurting yourself mentally at the expense of trying to hustle for maybe more money, that fancier car, those better clothes, that bigger house, whatever it may be. So I think kind of one of the treatments to hustle culture is this idea of gratitude. Being thankful for what you do have, being thankful for the life that you do experience. And I also think, in this world, we value money so much, right? But as I age, and I think everyone kind of knows this proverb, but, money is not our most valuable currency. In my experience, it's really time, right? And I really love doing this podcast with you, and I love my job, but I also want to make sure that I still have the appreciation of, I don't want to spend my entire life hustling towards this mental health career. I want to experience other things that I also find valuable, like spending time with my wife, my family, my hobbies that I really enjoy. It's all a balance.
Right. And I think sometimes, when hustle culture does end up becoming toxic, it's usually due to that loss of balance, right? You can teeter so far one way that you lose all semblance of your humanity, all semblance of any kind of sense of well-being, and you become so consumed by it. So I've thought a lot about this, Logan, and like you said, like money is very important in our society, right? Not just our society, it's all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
societies across time. Money's undoubtedly been something that's important for the entirety of humanity, I would argue. So, we have to ask ourselves, at what point is it enough? Right. And I think today that question is a lot more difficult to answer than I would argue during previous generations. We look around social media, right? Everybody has a phone with us. We
Mm.
see Instagram. We see how everybody's, portraying the best aspects of their lives, not only just our friends, but then we see people from all over the world, flashing nice cars, nice watches, maybe with an incredible body, whatever it may be, whatever you're hustling towards. We see the extreme version of hyper successful people in that arena, and we feel the desire and even the need sometimes to achieve that goal. And to that end, hustle culture, I would define it as you're spending every single minute, every single day trying to attain that goal at the detriment of every single aspect of your life. And it can be very exhausting at times, but at the same time, when we look at these individuals that we're trying to aspire to on social media, that's not the picture that we see. We don't look at them and say, oh, how exhausting it must be for that
Mm.
individual. But rather, we only see the success. Our thought process is, what can I do to attain that level of success, whatever that may be. So I'm going to give you an example, Logan. I think a lot of the times, in terms of money, we kind of think about, like the CEOs of the biggest companies, in the US as, having attained this American dream, right? They have, it seems like, an infinite amount of resources.
Mm-hmm.
They have huge followings on social media, so they have a lot of, social capital and also economic capital. And a lot of people want to be just like them. But at the same time, I don't think what we see is, the kind of life that they live. When we talk about these CEOs, a lot of the times they're putting in like 80, 90-hour work weeks. These are hyper competitive individuals. And, in terms of work ethic, they're like 1% of the 1%. And all that stuff comes at a cost. So they actually did a poll. They looked at CEOs, and I want to get you the exact numbers.
Okay.
Okay, so CEOs are depressed at 2 times the rate of the general population.
Interesting.
Yeah, so externally, we can say like these people have it all together. They have lives that we're supposed to be envious of. But when we actually ask them the questions about their mental health, a lot of them they're suffering. They're not having a good time, and I don't think there's a way to attain happiness or contentment in life when you're chasing this goal that only like 1% of 1% of people can attain. Right, a goal like that, a goal that exclusive, it requires essentially every single part of you. And
Mm.
when you give that kind of effort to this end, other aspects of your life undoubtedly takes a hit. And thus, they're depressed at extremely high rates compared to the general population.
I think that's extremely analogous to the road that me and you both lived. I don't know what the exact stats are, but what is it, like 5% of people who apply to medical school end up getting in or something?
It's competitive, very competitive
Right.
to
I
say
mean,
the
who
least.
who knows? And honestly, who really fucking cares? I just remember when I was a pre med student, keep thinking like, okay, I'll be happy when I achieve X, when I get into medical school. In medical school, I remember I'll be happy when I get that psychiatry residency. And then when I'm in this seat now, it's like, I'll be happy once I'm finally that attending, making that big boy bucks. Always like that future experience of happiness. Like I'll sacrifice my mental health now because in the future, I'm going to feel that happiness. And it's always like expectations, don't always live up to the reality, and so in my own personal life, and I also try to kind of educate my patients on this, but I do think like an element of mindfulness, like you can't experience future emotions, you can't experience past emotions, reminiscing about the past. The only really way to experience any kind of mental health sensation is right now. So I'm curious, after you just got back from South Korea, I want to kind of hear about that. And you were like, okay, well, I want to talk about hustle culture because it's, I don't know, different in South Korea. I've never been to South Korea. I don't know much about the Korean culture. Educate me.
Sure. So when we talk about hustle culture in Korea, and I will pose the same question, in terms of the social landscape here in the US. I find myself wondering because Koreans, and I think a lot of countries in Asia, they're extremely hardworking, like
Mm-hmm.
extremely ridiculously hardworking. And I find myself asking, is this a result of ambition? Is this a result of trying to attain a goal that, like trying to buy luxurious goods or whatever else that you want out of life? Or is this simply a matter of survival? Because when we look at, places like South Korea, China, Japan, these places have undergone massive economic development within really the past generation. And right now, things are very tough over there. So I follow this channel where I get news of China, right? Things that are happening on the ground in China. And one of the big issues they're facing right now is new graduates, they're unable to find employment. And they're actually facing a massive surge of unemployed young individuals. And
with graduate degrees.
With graduate degrees, yeah, college degrees. I don't know if that's higher level, but
Right.
they're all, yeah, a lot of them have college degrees, but they're unable to find employment. And I know to a certain degree we do have that same issue here in the United States.
Certainly.
It is a growing issue, but I would argue that in China especially, it's a lot more magnified.
Okay.
And I feel like people are really desperate and they're looking for ways to survive. For them, like housing is even more unaffordable than it is here in the US. There's a lot of social pressure to, buy a car, buy a house. And for a lot of people, it's becoming a fantasy. And a lot of people are checking out. And they're forced to look for alternative means of survival. So I'm going to show you this little video, which
Okay.
I kind of thought was hilarious in an extremely depressing way. So, man, I remember listening to Joe Rogan and he's like, TikTok here is very different from the TikTok in China.
It is.
Yeah, TikTok, he said that TikTok here, they're showing, like they're
Dances.
Yeah, dancing, and they're kind of making people, especially young children, want to grow up to become influencers.
Right.
And I remember hearing that, in China, it's not like that. It's all like science, reading, like all educational. And kids in China don't really want to grow up to be influencers and social media stars. But these new reports coming out of China shows the contrary, actually. And I think it's actually a result of, the terrible job market that a lot of young graduates are facing over there. And, it's just a reflex in an effort to survive. So I'm going to pull up this video for you, Logan. I want to see what you think. All right. Yeah, just go ahead and play that video, okay?
All right. And we'll put this on the YouTube as well so you guys can view it too.
It's kind of sad and dystopian. This huge group of people were seen live streaming under a bridge in China.
Wow. So, for any of you audio listeners out here, I'm looking at this. It looks like, I'm assuming maybe these are homeless people, but it looks like a lot of young people. So I guess I'm not totally sure. Maybe it was just a bad weather day, and that's why they're doing this kind of social influencing. They have ring lights like we have in this room, trying to create this like social media presence.
But here's some context. So these people are people that are unemployed. There are people that are fed up with the way the system is. They're fed up with how difficult it is to find employment. So they're attempting to become influencers so that they can pursue a living. So all over China, these locations are popping up under bridges where people just gather in mass and they're just streaming there. And this isn't like a special event. This is happening day after day after day after day. So to me, I look at this and I see desperation. I see people, a group of young people trying to survive, a group of young people trying to escape the system, and trying to make a living, doing something that's not going to trap them to the norms of society. And you have to remember, in Asian culture, the societal norms as far as working hours goes is ridiculous. So in China, they have this thing called a 966.
Okay.
Wait, did I say that right? Hold on. Let me make sure I'm giving you the right numbers.
Was that a Freudian slip? Or are you just trying to say 69 a bunch of times over here, Jim?
All right. So it's called the 996. Okay, there we go. So 996 is this philosophy in China. You're working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week.
Damn.
And basically Jack Ma, who's the inventor of the Chinese version of Amazon, one of the richest people in China, he said that he basically came out and and said, in a response to the criticism of 996 culture, he said this is a privilege. It should be a privilege to be able to dedicate hours to attain a goal, to try to make a better life for yourself, because not many people are afforded these kind of opportunities, especially historically speaking. So that's one side of it. And clearly, young people are kind of revolting against that. I mean, those are incredibly long hours, and they're kind of checking out. And here we go. We have a bunch of influencers under a bridge, all like crammed next to each other, trying to make a living and trying to carve out a life that's not going to trap them to an office 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's like what, a 72-hour work week right there. You know, us residents, I know they put a cap on. We're not supposed to work more than 80. Thankfully, as a psychiatry resident, I occasionally have to work 80, but it's not frequently. A lot of our colleagues, though, in the world of surgery and internal medicine certainly do, though, right? And, you know, if hearing that like as a normal, that's like a normal work schedule, it sounds like in China, it like made me kind of have a visceral reaction, sick to my stomach. Like even like a 40-hour work week, I'm like, ugh, you know, like I aspire to hopefully work less than that because I truly want to be able to spend more time like with my family, with my dogs, with my hobbies, you know, just enjoying my life. And so to have that be a privilege, as that CEO describes, it's like, okay, well, kindly go fuck yourself, because I think that is so unhealthy. I do think that we as psychiatrists need to advocate for our patients in a sense as like proper work conditions. Now, of course, we're only physicians here in America, in the state of New Jersey. But you know, this YouTube channel, this podcast that we're creating is distributed worldwide. And I do think that it is so mentally important that we advocate for this idea of balance. I don't know how anyone in this world can live a balanced life working, you know, 996 as you described. That's in my eyes impossible. How could you have adequate time to sleep, to exercise, to engage socially? Or that's impossible in my eyes.
Yeah, medicine residents just heard that and they're like 996. That's just another week for me.
Right. That's a normal
So
week.
unfortunate.
Right. But I also wanted to kind of respond to, you know, that seeing those people in China trying to do the influencing and stuff under the bridge. In many ways, it's like, isn't that also kind of what we're doing here? You know, why I wanted to do this, and we talked about this a lot in the last episode, that I don't like the idea of necessarily working in a traditional physician or psychiatrist role. You know, I want to have the freedom to do what I want. That makes me happy, to be my own boss. And that's what kind of drives me into this space. And I wonder what kind of drives you into this space, and perhaps how we can encourage our patients to do the same thing, to try to take control of their life, but most importantly, in a healthy way.
I think the key difference, Logan, is that we have an alternative way out. We can always take a job somewhere. And, you know, thankfully right now, as psychiatrists, we can find employment pretty much anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But for those individuals in that video, they are not able to secure employment anywhere else. So for them, it's really a last, you know, their backs are against the wall and they really have no other options. So they're kind of making this last ditched effort and trying to survive, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's the feel I get when I think about just hustle culture and, you know, the incredibly stressful work environment in places like China and South Korea. And, you know, we saw all these individuals on their phones. And I think that's also a big part driving hustle culture in Asia and also in the United States. Because if you think about it, what does your phone really represent? It represents ability to do work literally anywhere you go. Mm-hmm. You have a little computer with you anywhere that you go. So even if you're on the train, even if you're working out, and I deal with this sometimes when I'm working out, I'm like, maybe I should be listening to an audiobook. Maybe I shouldn't be listening to music, right? I guess that's a real first world problem, but it does have this unconscious pressure and at times maybe even conscious pressure for you to constantly be productive. And not only that, it also represents that we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have access to what other people are doing, a constant reminder of the success of, I should say, the external success of other people everywhere that we go. So one, we're constantly reminded that there's people doing better than us in whatever arena that we're attempting to attain success in. And two, there's always a mode where you can constantly work and, try to attain that goal that you're striving for. So these two things in combination, I think, has a really negative impact on our mental health. And I think it's one of the main ways that hustle culture is influencing the negative mental health outcomes for especially the youth in our society today.
So I guess as a doctor, if I was your patient and you could clearly see that I had like a pathological amount of hustle drive, what would you tell me? How would you try to help me?
That's a tough one because I think so. Yes, we're talking about hustle culture like it's a bad thing, right? But the reality of it is, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, right? We are a product of hard work,
Hmm.
right? We didn't get into medical school. We didn't get into a psychiatry residency by mailing it in,
Right.
right? We had to bring it every single day. We had to make a lot of sacrifices financially and also in terms of time and effort.
Emotionally,
Yeah,
yeah.
arguably in medical school, I was working like 60, 70 hours a week,
Hmm.
and for months and months at a time without
Years.
getting paid. Yeah, without
Right.
getting paid and going further and further into debt. I'm working extremely hard in residency, and so I'm not gonna sit here and say like, hey, you should just take it easy, because I feel like anybody trying to attain any sort of goal that's difficult to attain, the reality is that it does require an incredible amount of effort. And when you're giving that kind of effort, it does take sacrifice. You have to sacrifice other aspects of your life. So here's the first thing I would ask that individual: what do you really want out of life? What is, where is ambition enough for you? What position do you need to attain for you to feel satisfied, right? And that's a different answer for every single patient. And when we talk about hustle culture, working hard, that also looks differently for every single individual. Hey, for some people, you're at a place where getting up at 7 a.m. might be extremely difficult for you. So for that person, if you get up at 7 a.m., I would say you're doing an incredible job. But for other people, it can be, getting, you just have to open up YouTube and you see like my 5 a.m. routine,
Oh
going to the
yeah.
gym, and then
Right.
my hyper productive day throughout the day. And, it's different for everybody. And I think we need to kind of block out the noise from other people. We have to recognize that you're in a journey, you're in a race, you're in a fight against yourself. What hard work for you is not necessarily what hard work looks like for other people. So that's the main message I would give to that patient. And at the end of the day, that needs to be answered internally. That is a question. I guess it's more of a philosophical question. What do you want out of life?
Hmm. If I was the physician and dealing with a patient who I had thought had a kind of pathological amount of that hustle culture that we described, I like using a lot of analogies in my practice. And so, it's obviously very personal to me. I find that I have a desire to get involved with activities that actually do require a lot of balance, like surfing, skateboarding, mountain biking, skiing, and all of these things. But I think it's extremely also relevant to approach to life, because what we keep talking about is like that drive, that ambition, that hustle isn't necessarily bad. It can be a good thing. It can help provide for yourself, provide for your family, but too much of it, like any drug, is toxic. And so I think that there has to be an element of balance, the yin and the yang, the how you balance yourself on a skateboard, applying that same philosophy to your life. And if you're going to be that person that wants to work 12 hours a day, how are you going to fulfill your life on the other side with something that has nothing to do with hustle, that has nothing to do with necessarily money, but how can you feel that joy without necessarily achieving something? How can you find that sensation in this present moment?
Here's what I struggle the most with when it comes to trying to find balance, Logan. And perhaps you can help me out with this. There's times where, I'm supposed to be relaxing, maybe, kick back on the couch, watch some Netflix mindlessly. And then from time to time, man, this switch goes on in my brain that says, no, you can't be doing this right now.
Mm.
There's people out there working. You could be reading this right now. You could be learning about more psychiatry. You can be editing a video for the podcast. You can be reading up for the next podcast. There's so many racing thoughts that I have. And it's a real struggle for me.
Hmm.
Logan, is that something that you deal with as well, or am I alone in
Oh,
this?
I mean, no, I think we all experience that, right? And I just think it's the old proverb. I forget if I said it this episode or others, but comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I have those sensations, I'm big on this podcast with full open disclosure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so every year as psychiatry residents, me and you have to take an exam called the PRITE, the Psychiatry Residency in Training exam, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
the PRITE. This is a test that just kind of tests our psychological knowledge. Has a lot of questions on there that I'm like, this is not relevant at all to my day-to-day practice, but whatever. And honestly, man, I consider myself a good psychiatrist. I consider myself someone who's able to talk to patients well. Do I do well on that test? God, I suck. I suck, dude. I'm the bottom of our class, and nationwide, I am like the bottom 10%. I just cannot figure out that damn test. And I get really down on myself frequently, when I think about that. And I have those same thoughts. I could be reading more journal articles right now. I could be listening to an audiobook or a podcast relevant to psychiatry. But no, I'm listening to Two Bears, One Cave, with Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer, just laughing my ass off, just having a good time. And my treatment for that thought process is, my role in this world is being the best psychiatrist that I can be. Whether my knowledge compares to you or other colleagues or other psychiatrists throughout this entire world is kind of irrelevant in some ways. I want to be just the best one that I can be. And in order to be the best psychiatrist for me personally, I know that I really have to be honing in that balance of life. I can't be a psychiatrist 95% of my waking hours. That's impossible. I have to have this balance, because if I have this balance, I'm going to be able to be more present with my patients, be a better listener, be more fulfilled, more satisfied, and be in this for the long term.
Logan, have you ever heard of a saying called discipline equals freedom?
Certainly. I feel like David Goggins.
Jocko Willink.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Discipline equals freedom. So I feel like that's a mantra that I've kind of used to overcome some of the guilt that I feel at times, when I'm supposed to be resting. So I actually like to wake up like pretty damn early.
I know
I'm
do.
a morning person.
Me and you are very different when it comes to that.
I'm definitely a morning person. And the reason why I, try to structure my daily life that way is because there's things that I want to do, right? I want to spend a little bit of time reading every day. I want to go to the gym, and I've found that after work, I'm drained. I can't do anything. Right. I have no energy for anything else. So I just figured out that it's better for me to just wake up in the morning, get everything done, and then go to work. And by the time I'm done with work, yes, I am super exhausted, but I also have that mental clarity. I know I've done everything that I wanted to do. All the goals that I've set for the day, I've accomplished them. So I feel like I have the permission to do whatever I want. If I just want to lay there on my couch, just like dead like a zombie, hey, so be it. And whenever I do get those thoughts again that I should be, that I should get up, I need to go, shopping, maybe I could go fix my car, whatever it may be. I can always reflect on earlier part of my day and say, hey, it's okay. I don't have to do any of that. You deserve this break because this is the goal that you set out for yourself and you've accomplished that goal. And I would even argue that you don't have to accomplish that goal every single day. I certainly don't. And that in itself can be a trap because you can sit at the end of the day and say, oh, fuck, like I didn't do this, this, and this. And I don't think it's ever trying to accomplish that goal 100%. But the key is, for me at least, and what I found the best to be for my mental health well-being is set a goal and try to approximate that goal to the best of my ability, day in, day out. There are some days where I exceed the goal, some days where I fall flat on my face and I don't get anything done. But as long as I made that effort, as long as I'm bringing that effort day after day after day, I have the permission to be kind to myself.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I frequently use a lot of like the Notes app, and I'm a Mac guy. I got the iPhone, the iWatch, and I have a computer that's a Mac too. And so it's kind of nice that, I can open up the Notes and you can see it on both your computer and your phone and even your iPad. And I kind of, like noting out my tasks for the day. And most of the time it's kind of relevant to work or even this podcast and stuff. But I even like to build in like little things like exercise 30 minutes today, do my laundry, stretch for 20 minutes. Do I always achieve all of those things? Absolutely not, right? But I find it's very, I have a lot of gratitude when I'm able to like delete those things. But I also at the same time try to give myself the grace. Hey, if you don't accomplish all these things, that's okay. You're human. We're not supposed to be perfect entities. Okay. Maybe those perfect entities, I don't know, are going to be some kind of like artificial intelligence thing. That's something we'll talk about in a future episode. But we've been kind of touching on hustle culture for what? I don't know, 30 minutes. Is there any last thoughts that you have relevant to this episode?
I can share a little daydream that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I get caught up in that thought process of like, oh, I need to do this, and that, I always kind of think to myself, and I know I'm a weirdo. I'm going to preface my thoughts.
We all know
with
that.
Yeah. So I just kind of picture myself wondering, hey, like, what if I was born like maybe like 1,000 years ago? Maybe I was born into like a Native American society, and I looked this up. It says they worked hunter-gatherer societies. They work basically 10 to 15 hours a week.
Ooh.
So I'm just like, man, wouldn't life be amazing if I can just like go on a buffalo hunt in the morning, kill a buffalo, come back and just do nothing for the rest of the day. And that's all the worry that I have.
Maybe that's something that we need to aspire to. Our brains evolved over, I mean, in my opinion, millennia, right?
Yeah.
Very long time. Maybe that's how we were designed. Maybe that's actually the treatment for the mental health crisis that we're in. That maybe this hustle culture is actually causing a lot of this pathology that we see with mental illness, with addiction, with social isolation, all these things. Maybe we kind of get lost in all the details of SSRIs and pharmacology and therapy and all these things. Maybe in reality, it's actually more just working less.
Yeah, maybe it's just the extraneous factors that we deal with in life that's causing all these struggles for so many people.
If you liked kind of the end of this conversation, I really encourage you to listen to a future episode, because the next episode that we do, I'm going to be talking a lot about kind of artificial intelligence, perhaps universal basic income, and what our future is going to entail. So if you like this episode, please leave a 5-star review, subscribe. Over my shoulder, I have a couple books here that I have written, one with my colleague, Imperfect Balance in Medical School, that's relevant for anyone who's pursuing graduate education. This book is about mental health conditions and how students overcame and dealt with those mental health conditions in graduate school. The other book is We All Have Something Here. It's a children's book relevant for mental health. Cheers, June. This was a fun episode.
You're a hustler, Logan.
Hustler.
Look at you. Author, podcaster, extraordinary doctor.
I guess so, but happy at least,
Yeah,
right?
keep in balance, my friend.
All right,
and
my
we'll
friend.
catch you in the next one.